This is America on the Road, winner of the International Automotive Media Conference Gold Medal Award for Radio, and now in its 25th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. Tesla is facing an investigation by the SEC in connection with claims of a whistleblower, and we'll have the details for you. Meanwhile, the continuing drama about who will lead Volkswagen might have a resolution in the next week, and we'll tell you all about that. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at MercuryInsurance.com. Hi, I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Chris is across the country from me in the frigid climes of Maine. I'm in Southern California, where it's not all that warm either. But Chris, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate you co-hosting.
Thank you for having me, Jack. It's starting to feel and look a little bit like Christmas around here. Hopefully we will get some real snowfall before the season is over with, though.
Is there snow on the ground there, or have you been dusted with snow? What's been going on in that score?
We were dusted and a couple of messy little bit of ice here and there, but nothing substantial so far.
I guess that's a good thing. I mean, I always feel like we in California have snow where it belongs, which is up in the mountains where we can get to it, but we don't have to live with it on a day-to-day basis. So that's one of the good things we have going for us here. A good thing we have going for us on the show is a terrific guest. Our special guest this time around is David Partlow. He is the chief engineer on the all-new 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee, the SUV. I sat down with him in Moab, Utah. Well, boy, it was gorgeous there, and we had a very nice chat about the new Grand Cherokee. It is quite a capable vehicle, so we look forward to that, bringing that discussion to you. So, Chris, what were you driving this past week?
Well, I had the perfect vehicle for this time of the year with all the ice and non-existent snow we're getting. I had the 2022 Subaru Forester Wilderness.
Ah, very cool. I look forward to hearing your report on that. I had my second minivan in a row, and I know you'll be excited about that, Chris. I had the 2022 Toyota Sienna. It's an all-hybrid vehicle. That's the only way you can get it. And I'll tell you how it stacks up against the 2022 Kia Carnival that we talked about last week and the other minivans. It's getting to be a pretty hot segment. It's kind of amazing. Before we do that, though, we will have the week's latest automotive news for you and a lot of drama there as well. So a lot coming up on this edition of America on the Road. Thanks so much for being with us. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad, and we're really pleased you're with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you, along with Chris Teague. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. It is latest news time, and we have some very fascinating news, I think, for you this time around. We try to have interesting news for you, but I think it's particularly good and juicy this week. We have a story on Tesla, and of course, that's always juicy. In this case, there is a whistleblower who has filed a complaint against Tesla, saying that it failed to properly notify its shareholders and the public of fire risks. But interestingly enough, not with its vehicles, but with the solar panel systems that it also builds. That's kind of gone under the radar recently. It used to be a fairly big thing, but there is a former Toyota executive who then went to work for Tesla and then apparently was fired. His name is Stephen Henkes. He filed a whistleblower complaint saying that these things have a tendency to catch fire, and Tesla hasn't let people know that that could happen. What's your take on that, Chris?
Well, I think, first of all, honesty is the best policy. But now we're in a situation, or at least Tesla's in a situation where non-vehicle related hardware could cast doubt on the vehicle hardware. Maybe not for the diehard Tesla fans, but for other people. So hopefully for Tesla, they get it straightened out. But I mean, I guess for their shareholders, they're hoping for a resolution sooner rather than later, I should say. Yeah,
well, it's interesting to have the Security and Exchange Commission take a look at you, especially given the immense value of Tesla on the stock market. Of course, they are already facing a federal safety probe. This has to do with their driver assistance systems that kind of are intent about calling self-driving systems. They're not really. That strikes me as a bit of an issue just right there.
Yeah, I think people will buy what you sell them, and if you're selling them what you're calling full self-driving, they're probably going to try to treat it that way, even to the detriment of their safety and others. I think that one of the things that the probe is looking at with Tesla, at least in that regard, is whether they're doing enough to monitor the drivers. So I think they've got a lot of battles to fight on plenty of different fronts. So for them, it'd probably be ideal just to be building cars at this point in time and not fighting so many different legal battles.
Yeah, I guess the good news for them is their war chest is pretty fat. They do have a big market capitalization, and I guess that translates into power out there. But we'll see how that unfolds, and we'll see what happens with the SEC probe of Tesla. On another front, maybe equally dramatic, is what's been going on at Volkswagen. Its CEO, Herbert Diess, has been embattled. I love the term embattled, don't you? When somebody is having problems, they call them embattled. He certainly has been, and there have been people, especially in the unions, the Volkswagen unions, that have been calling for his ouster, but it looks like he's going to stick around. He's going to stick around, but get his wings clipped a little bit. It looks as if Volkswagen is going to give more power to the Volkswagen brand chief, a guy named Ralph Brandstatter. He will join the management board. That's where all the power is at Volkswagen. And Diess will focus on strategy. I'm not sure what that means. If you're focusing on strategy, are you looking over the horizon while somebody else is doing the day-to-day? Maybe that's what they're doing, is kind of easing him out in that manner. There's been a lot of squabbling between the labor leaders and Volkswagen management about where they're going to go, particularly with electric cars. And it's just been kind of a mess, hasn't it?
I agree. It's kind of an interesting situation with labor leaders sitting in such positions of power and working with Volkswagen at such a high level. I think one of the things that got him in trouble, if I'm not mistaken, in the first place was mentioning future job cuts, which started the whole ball rolling. So it's an interesting situation from an American standpoint. Obviously things operate a little bit differently here. So I'll be looking to see how this plays out.
If you want labor peace, if you want things to go well, I don't know that you go public with the idea of cutting something like 30,000 jobs or the possibility that could happen. Maybe you keep that under the radar, at least until you do it. And I don't know that they want to do it or we're going to do it. But when you bring that up, a lot of people get very testy about it, and especially the labor unions who have incredible sway in Germany. And as you mentioned, they're on the board of directors of Volkswagen and other car makers. So it's an interesting situation there. Another interesting situation is what the various car makers around the world are doing about this microchip shortage that we're seeing. Apparently, a lot of the manufacturers had been buying their microchips through a third party as opposed to from the manufacturers of microchips and semiconductors. And I think this whole brouhaha that we've experienced in the fact that billions of dollars in inventory are tied up because they can't be built because they don't have microchips has forced some rethinking of this, including the idea that many manufacturers are going to go directly to the makers of microchips. In fact, some might actually build semiconductors themselves. I mean, what's your take on what's going to happen on this score, Chris?
Well, I think that the automakers are going to be a lot more aware of their global supply chain than they were before. Even though it sounds silly to say, given the size of some of these companies, but companies like General Motors and Ford have produced microchips in the past and have actually stopped to focus on other things. So I think it's smart of them to sort of insource or keep an eye on their supply chain as closely as they can. So this is a big eye opener for them. It's surprising that it took such a severe action to get them to make this move, but I'm glad that they are, so we can avoid future disruptions and I can keep buying cheap old cars.
Yeah, well, I hope we avoid future disruptions. I don't know that it's guaranteed, but I'm hopeful. One of the interesting things that I think some companies are doing, and Ford Motor Company is maybe numero uno in this, is they're building vehicles without the chips and then storing them, squirreling them away on the hope, and I guess the belief, that at some point they will get the chips, they can install those chips, and then ship those cars. When you think of what it takes to build a manufacturing plant, you basically have to keep those big plants going, or it's incredibly expensive as a car company. So you can see why they would build vehicles even if they can't ship them, but it's certainly not the way they want to do it, is it?
Yeah, and no, that's the right answer to that. But the slashing of production schedules and the reduction of the overall number of days that they're rolling the factory lines, that's just huge costs associated with that, as you said. So it really opened my eyes this year reading some of the numbers associated with the downtime, even just a day or 2 days in some cases, or a shift. So for them, I'm sure they're itching to get back to some sort of stability.
Yeah, I mean, you and I could retire on the amount of money that is lost if a day's production is lost in one of these big companies. It's just a staggering amount of money. And you can understand why, because cars are expensive consumer products, among the most expensive out there, but they sell in very, very high numbers. So they're made in plants that just churn them out, like they're loaves of bread or something like that. One of the other things that car companies are doing, and I found this interesting too, is they're changing their software so they can use either fewer semiconductors or just less complicated semiconductors. That takes some doing too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I have no perception. When I start looking at the number of conductors and semiconductors and chips that it takes to run even something as simple as like the heated seats in a car, it's mind-blowing. But I'm sure there will be some efficiencies to be found.
I think so too. Here's another item before we end this segment. Toyota has announced a U.S. battery production plant. That's interesting because Toyota had not exactly been on the forefront of battery electric vehicles up till now, but they have recently introduced a new battery electric vehicle, and now they're going gung-ho on a new $1.29 billion battery manufacturing plant. It's going to be called the Toyota Battery Manufacturing North Carolina, which gives you a hint probably where it is. Your old home state of North Carolina, huh?
Yeah, I agree. And, you say Toyota kind of dragged their feet a little bit. It's interesting to see how quickly they've accelerated to bring everything here onto American soil where they do a lot of their car production already. So I guess it makes sense to have the batteries close to where you're going to be building the vehicles.
It is a big deal for Toyota, and congratulations to them, and congratulations to North Carolina. When we come back, we will be road testing a couple of interesting vehicles, including the Subaru Forester and the Toyota Sienna minivan. So stay with us for that. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you, and thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad with you for road test time on America on the Road. And interesting vehicles, I think maybe perfect vehicles for wintertime, and we're rapidly approaching that. We're rapidly approaching Christmas and wintertime, so we have that to look forward to. I guess we can look forward to it. And great vehicles. Chris, tell us a bit about the vehicle you were driving. I think it's a perfect Maine vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We talk about vehicles that stop traffic, and I mentioned Genesis and a couple others that have done it. People really dig the Subaru Wilderness, the Subaru Forester Wilderness here. I think it's something about the body cladding. It's got a lot of black plastic wheel arches and a big bumper and beefy wheels and tires. And it's really, it's eye-catching. And, it rides higher than a normal Forester, which I'll get into in just a moment. But it's just a great-looking vehicle, and it does stick out, especially in a sea of Subarus, which are very popular here. But this is the Forester Wilderness, so this is a new trim for the vehicle. It's got about 9.2 inches of ground clearance, which improves the breakover angle and the approach angle, which are the angles that you can drive up to and over other things, which I'm sure that you appreciate in downtown Los Angeles. Jack?
I try to avoid downtown Los Angeles, but I think you're right. Absolutely. I mean, we got big potholes in downtown Los Angeles, so I guess that might come into play there.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. It's a good idea here too because our roads stay pretty chewed up. But under the hood, it's got a 2.5 liter flat four cylinder engine, flat four, with just about 182 horsepower, 176 pound-feet of torque. If that doesn't sound like a lot of power, it's not. It's not a thrust that you're going to get any sort of thrill out of in this vehicle, but it does a good job at moving it down the road. It's paired with standard all-wheel drive and a continuously variable transmission. And Jack, I know that you drove the Outback Wilderness. I want to get your thought on how the CVT performs in sort of a trail environment there.
I think it performs okay. I think you and I won't speak for you. I guess I'll speak for me. I think I prefer a geared transmission in that kind of situation. I always feel like they're patching this continuously variable transmission to do things that maybe it wasn't really built to do really well. One of the things it's built to do really well is provide great fuel economy. It tailors ratio to what you need from the engine at that particular moment. That's great. It helps the engine operate in the right rev band, the most efficient rev band, so that's all good. For things like off-roading, I don't know that it's the primary thing you want to have.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. In fact, I know I agree with that. However, Subaru has changed the setup of this a little bit. So it's got what they're calling a lower initial gearing. It's not a first gear. But what that does, it makes it a little bit quicker than the standard Forester. It also gives it 3,000 pound tow rating, which is pretty good for such a small vehicle. One thing I want to note is that a lot of people are looking at this or probably will look at this and think, this would be great for overlanding. It'd be great for camping or spending the night out in the woods. And if you look at the roof racks, and that might be tempting to throw a tent up there, I will say that it's only able to handle 220 pounds while it's sitting still. I'm sorry, while it's in motion, and 800 pounds while it's parked. So if you and somebody else in a tent and some of your gear goes up there, you're going to get pretty close to that rating. So beyond that, though, I do think that the interior space is very great, very good. So it's got water repellent sort of utility seats, I'll call them. They're not quite nylon. They're not quite synthetic leather. They're somewhere in between. Feels really nice, durable. It's going to be easy to clean when you're out in the woods and get mud all over the place. The back seats are plenty spacious. The Forester's roof has always been very tall, and that's been one of its calling cards. So back seat passengers have plenty of space. And in the back, there's a lot of room for a dog, for your gear. Again, that tall roof makes loading this thing very easy. And it still has a pretty comfortable floor height, so you can load things in without having to lift it up, especially my dog is getting up towards 14 years old, and he's as out of shape as I am. So helping him get into the back is a lot easier. But Jack, I want to get your feeling on the Wilderness, and then I'll hand it back over to you for your review.
Well, I like the Wilderness that I had. I like the fact that we're seeing these dedicated to off-road vehicles again. I think SUVs were kind of getting very limp-wristed, kind of very tame. And I think one of the things they offer, at least in terms of the aura around them or how you feel about yourself when you're driving them, is the idea that you can go off-road and have all these wonderful adventures. And if you're just driving around in a vehicle that's basically designed just for the highway, you don't have that. So I like the fact that we're seeing vehicles like the Wilderness out there.
Great. I totally agree.
Well, let me tell you about the Toyota Sienna. I think you'll be excited about this because I know you're a minivan fan. And I guess I'm becoming converted. The last two vehicles, I tested the Kia Carnival last week. We had it for Thanksgiving week, actually, and we had a great time in it. And then back to back, I had the Toyota Sienna, pretty much redesigned for 2021 model year, and they did a good job with it. But I think the most exciting thing is the fact that they went to all hybrid. This is only available with a hybrid powertrain, and I think that sets it apart from all the other minivans. And it strikes me the minivan segment is getting hotter and hotter. I mean, who would have guessed that would happen? But I really liked the Carnival last time around. I think you liked it as well, Chris, when you were driving the Carnival. And here we have this all-hybrid Sienna that I think really, kicks up the whole program pretty significantly. I had an XLE version. It had synthetic leather upholstery, just what you were talking about when you talked about the Subaru, a very practical kind of upholstery. Has 4-zone climate control, all the requisite power features, heated front seats. It's got a sunroof, of course, hands-free operation of the sliding doors, the lift gate, all of that stuff. It's really very useful vehicle all the way around. And it's priced at less than the average transaction price of the average car out there, which is a really good deal. This had, the test vehicle that I had a kind of hybrid second row bench seat, and I am curious as to your reaction to that, Chris. Essentially, it has what amounts to two captain's chairs, or can be, they feel like two captain's chairs, but then there is this little kind of gap filler where you can put a third person. It's belted for a third person in the second row, and I think that's maybe a really good solution. What's your take on that?
I think it's a great solution if you buy the captain's chairs and you find yourself needing that extra seat in the middle. I've been, and I will continue to be a proponent of captain's chairs and any vehicle that offers them. I'll say the only reason we didn't buy them for my XC90 is that the Volvo captain's chair options didn't have armrests in the middle, or we would have gotten those as well. So if you need the extra seat, though, I think that's a great solution.
Yeah, another great thing about this vehicle, beyond the hybrid powertrain, it uses a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine and a pair of electric motors. It puts out 243 horsepower, so that's nice. But you can also get an all-wheel drive version that has a third electric motor that drives the rear wheels. So the fact that you can get an all-wheel drive minivan, I think, sets it apart. Quite a good thing as well. And I think probably suits it for Maine, doesn't it?
I agree. The old quote-unquote Sienna with all-wheel drive was absolutely superb in the snow. I drove one. I remember driving it to my daughter's birthday party full of balloons in a blizzard where it was snowing sideways. But the party must go on, and the Sienna handled it just fine. So I think it's an awesome benefit for minivan buyers. You get the fuel economy of a hybrid plus the all-weather capability of all-wheel drive. And Toyota's got plenty of experience building hybrids. So I have not yet driven the new Sienna. I've been jealous seeing people drive it, so I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the fuel economy, because, of course, with the hybrid powertrain, you're going to get good fuel economy. It's going to be 36 miles per gallon city and highway, same both in city and highway. If you have all-wheel drive, you go down to 35 miles per gallon, so not much of a loss there, not much of a detriment. I would get the all-wheel drive if I could, I suppose. You could compare it to the Chrysler Pacifica. That is a plug-in hybrid. When it's being operated not necessarily as a plug-in, it gets 30 miles per gallon, so that's not as good as the Sienna. Of course, the plug-in hybrid can be operated without using the gasoline engine at all for long periods of time, so that certainly ups your fuel economy. When it comes to the interior of the Sienna, it has an interesting center console where there is a large area underneath the console, or underneath the area where the shifter is, where you could put a purse, or even a grocery bag, or a bag of to-go food or something like that. It seems very practical. It's unusual looking, but very, very practical. And then the second row seats, whether they're captain's chairs or not, have an incredible amount of forward and backward travel, more than 2 feet of travel, and that makes everything just so much more versatile. I think that's a great situation, too. What's your take on all this versatility in the Sienna?
I agree. I think the more different ways that you can configure the interior of a minivan, whether it's sliding seats or if you're Chrysler, folding them away or changing their configuration in any way, the more ways you have, the better. I mean, I think, you've had, your kids are older now. They don't necessarily need to tote them around everywhere, but there's so many times where I'll get one kid in the car and then the dog wants to go, and then we have something we need to pick up at the store, and folding the chairs down and moving things and sliding them is very, very handy. I think that I also like the under console storage that you mentioned. I think that for small items that you don't use or you don't need right at hand, like hand sanitizer, that sort of stuff, you can slide it right into there and it's ready to go and it stays out of the way. And then for my wife likes those sorts of things too, because she can stick her purse under there. Like if we're going on a hike or going on a trip somewhere and we want to walk somewhere and not carry a purse, it hides it right away, and it's not, you don't have to dig around in the trunk to get it out. So big bonuses on both of those fronts.
Absolutely true. So I think all around, in terms of safety, of course, it's a top safety pick from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. So all that's good. A lot of safety and driver assist systems, and Yeah, pretty good infotainment system. I wouldn't say that's necessarily the vehicle's strong suit, but all around, I think they really did a great job with the Toyota Sienna minivan. So I would absolutely consider this if I were looking for a multiple row vehicle right now. I think it's a terrific choice. And Chris, I think you like the Forester Wilderness quite a bit too. So two winners this time around.
Absolutely agree.
And when we come back, we will have a winner for you in terms of an interview. We will be interviewing David Partlow. He's the chief engineer on the all-new 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee. So stay with us for that. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you. And thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you. We're in Moab, Utah. A great place to be, and a especially great place to be when you're driving the Jeep Grand Cherokee. And with me is David Partlow. He is the chief engineer on the Grand Cherokee. You're the Grand Poobah of the Grand Cherokee. Thanks so much for being with us, number one.
Well, Jack, I'm glad to be here. It's a pleasure, and it's a beautiful day here in Moab.
It is a beautiful day, and we've had a beautiful day driving the Grand Cherokee. And we had driven the three-row Grand Cherokee a little earlier, reported about it on America on the Road, and now we're driving the two-row vehicle. Give our listeners the important things they should know about this vehicle right off the top.
This is an all-new Jeep Grand Cherokee two-row. It has a completely redesigned interior, which is gorgeous and a step above. It has a new chassis. So in the front, we've got a new front suspension. We've actually adopted what we call a virtual ball joint front suspension. And what's really key there is it allows us to tune the links independently, whether it be for comfort, for steering, for handling, and it allows us to produce a very dynamically pleasing vehicle.
It is, and it is all of that, and I had a chance to drive it, so I can report to that firsthand that it is a pleasing vehicle. Put it into context, will you? What are some of the competitive vehicles you are up against and look to outdo?
So when we look across our set, obviously there's the domestic competitors, there's some of the European competitors, and we really benchmark our performance to the segment. And from a driving dynamics perspective, we think we do very well.
Right. So you didn't mention any of it, but I will. Probably Ford Explorer is right in there. We're talking about the mid-size SUV range, typically.
Yes.
And
the two rows.
Yeah, the two rows.
Yep.
And for this particular vehicle, of course, and then for the Grand Cherokee family, you're talking about the
three rows,
including
as well. Yes.
Yeah. So that kind of puts it in context. And well, tell us where you think you outshine the competitors.
So as I already mentioned, the interior on the Jeep Grand Cherokee is really a step above. If you look at the entire competitive segment, we think this is really a USP, something that we do very well in. I've already mentioned driving.
So unique selling proposition, I believe, is what you're trying to get across there.
That is correct. Thank you for explaining that, Jack. Sorry for using the acronym.
We're going to probably hear a lot of acronyms as we go through the interview, but that's okay. That's what chief engineers on cars do, and my job is to help explain that.
Great.
But you're excited about this vehicle for so many reasons. One of the things is, and I think the basic thing is, it's a Jeep, right? I mean, you provide Jeepness to this segment, and nobody else can do that. Tell our listeners what that means.
Absolutely. So from a capability perspective, we've done some pretty amazing things. If I just think about the driveline, we've added a front axle disconnect. So what this does, Jeep's all about four-wheel drive. What this does, though, is it allows the system to determine when you need to have the front axle connected or disconnected. In some cases, you don't need to have it connected when you're driving down the highway. So to save energy, from a fuel efficiency perspective, it disconnects the front axle.
So it'll operate as a rear drive vehicle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So going further, we've adopted two active transfer cases, both a 1-speed and a 2-speed transfer case. And what these really allow the system to do is to check the terrain and the surroundings and determine how much torque needs to go to the front wheels, how much torque needs to go to the rear wheels. So it's really an active system that's constantly monitoring and optimizing the vehicle performance. And then as you add the QuadraDrive 2, you add a electronic
limited slip differential, right?
That is correct, to the rear of the vehicle. So now you can spread 100% of the torque from the left to the right. So now you have a system that's sensing, determining where the torque needs to go, and you can really sense that feeling of confidence both on-road and off-road.
Right. I mean, virtually all of your competitors are going to have some kind of all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive version of their vehicle, but they're not going to provide the choice that you have. Talk a bit about the choice of four-wheel drive systems that the Grand Cherokee offers.
So we have 3 four-wheel drive systems: Quadra-Track 1 with a single-speed active T-case, Quadra-Track 2 with a 2-speed active 2-speed T-case, and then Quadra-Drive 2, which has a 2-speed T-case along with the electronic limited slip differential in the rear.
And talk a bit about transfer cases for our listeners who probably are not necessarily four-wheel drive aficionados. Why that's important and what you provide in the transfer case.
So what that really does is it mounts to the rear of the transmission, and normally you'd have a prop shaft that goes to the rear wheels to drive the rear wheels. When you insert a transfer case in between, it directs torque to the front wheels, and that's what actually provides the power to those front wheels. We have different control algorithms to determine, we've got the 5 settings for terrain select, whether it's in auto, sport, snow, sand and mud, or rock, and that affects how the torque is distributed by those active T-cases. So not that we see, actually we did see some snow in the mountains at Moab.
We did, yeah.
But if you were to put the system into snow mode, you'd have a second gear start, which I think everybody could understand is it allows the vehicle to start in the conditions that it's on.
Right, without spinning the tires.
There you go.
Those of us who, I'm a former Midwesterner, you're a current Midwesterner, but we encounter plenty of snow and know how to start it. And then talk a bit, you've lengthened the wheelbase a little bit on this vehicle, and it seems, although the vehicle is not much longer, maybe not longer at all in terms of overall length, it's roomier like throughout. Tell us a bit about all of that.
Sure. So you kind of touched on a few items. So as far as overall length, we've increased the overall length by 3.4 inches.
Oh, okay, so
there's about 0.4 inches in the front for the safety cage. There is 2 inches in the wheelbase, and really for the wheelbase, we added 1 additional inch for the safety cage behind the front wheels, and we added just shy of 1 inch at the second row for knee room, 19 millimeters, to provide better passenger comfort. And then we did add 1 inch rearward of the vehicle to increase interior space.
Well, let's talk a bit about powertrain.
So our new Jeep Grand Cherokee comes with our tried and true 3.6 liter V6 as well as our 5.7 liter V8. Some of the interesting things on both of those powertrains, the 3.6, we've worked very hard to improve what we called engine stop-start. So what you'll notice, and you probably have your own feelings from the ride today. I don't know if you were in a 3.6 or a 5.7.
Yeah.
But we've improved the tactile response when the vehicle starts up and shuts down to make it more seamless for the customer.
And you pretty much don't feel it, which is what you're trying for, right? You're trying for a stop-start system that you don't notice is stopping and starting.
Absolutely. The customer didn't ask to be notified when we're saving fuel efficiency.
Right.
So it's there's an improvement there on the 5.7. One of the items that I didn't mention so far is just in the vehicle we have active engine mounts, which can switch from 2 states. And what this really allows us to do is it allows us to tune from an idle condition, so that where you want to have maximum isolation and dampen and not have that transmitted to the customer, to highway speeds where you want something that maybe doesn't transmit shake. What those active engine mounts have allowed us to do, though, is on our 5.7, when you go into a fuel savings mode, it allows us to make that transition also seamless for the customer.
And in that situation, it's operating on 4 cylinders instead of 8?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're one of the few, I think the Dodge Durango, kind of in a way a sister vehicle, I guess, of this vehicle, is the only other vehicle, I think, in the competitive set that has a V8 engine. Am I right?
It's something that we're really proud of because that V8 engine gives us a 7,200-pound towing capacity, which is why, we offer that to our customers, because what we know is some of the customers really want to be able to tow, and they really like that engine choice.
Well, and there is a 3-row version of this vehicle as well that you introduced earlier. We got a chance to drive it earlier in Michigan. Yep. Probably talk to you about it then.
Yeah. So I think there were a number of the team members there in June at our Chelsea Proving Grounds.
Right.
And we had the opportunity to drive the Grand Cherokee L, which is the 3-row version. both on I'll say a public road section or a road section, as well as we actually created an off-road section to allow, the different journalists to evaluate it and, see the capability off-road.
Well, this is a Jeep, so it's going to have really strong off-road credentials, right? At the same time, a lot of times it's going to be driven as a suburban station wagon in a lot of ways, right? So you have to balance those two out, I would imagine. How do you, as the chief engineer, go about doing that, Dave?
So the great thing about the Jeep Grand Cherokee is we have a model for everyone. We start with the Laredo, we move to the Limited. On the 2-row, we have a unique trim option, which is all about off-road, called the Trailhawk. We have the Overland, and we have the Summit. So depending on the customer's needs, we can get them into the right level of trim that has everything from a very capable SUV with, incredible on-road manners as well as interior, to a top-of-the-line system that has many features and really sets itself apart from the competition.
And talk quickly about transmission, and then we'll go on to...
Okay, it's our 8-speed transmission, which is should be familiar to our customers as we've used it in the past.
It's certainly familiar to me.
So it's tried and true, and we have continued to use it on the new Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah, very, very, very good. Makes sense. Well, infotainment, the whole connectivity, everything inside the car has become more and more important. Tell our listeners a bit about the story you have on the Grand Cherokee.
Sure. So the great news there is there are up to 6 screens in the new Jeep Grand Cherokee 2-row. There is a 10-inch cluster. There is a 10-inch heads-up display. There's a 10-inch center stack radio. There is an available 10-inch passenger screen. And what's really nice about the passenger screen is there's several different features. One, you can use it as a navigation platform. So, when you're driving down the road, your partner who's sitting in the
my wife is tense when she navigates. She's always afraid she's going to give me the wrong direction, but she's the navigator. So having that right in front of her, I think, is probably a boon.
Yeah, so actually, you have the ability to access the navigation. You can put in a new destination. You can send it to the center stack radio. All while you're driving, you don't have to pull over.
Good stuff.
Some additional features, it includes entertainment in the passenger screen, so you can port some of the entertainment from the front seat, or you can look at the cameras around the vehicle to see if there's anything near your vehicle.
Right. So if my wife is streaming something at home, she's watching something on TV at home, streaming on TV, and then goes into the car, she could do what?
So the beautiful thing is we've partnered with Amazon Fire, and now you can stop streaming something in your house, get into a vehicle equipped with rear seat entertainment, pick right up where you were when you left off, and you can watch it live in the vehicle while you're going down the road.
Now, can it be watched also on the passenger side display?
Absolutely. So the way the system works is there's 2 independent screens in the rear, so they can stream independent media, and the front passenger screen can control either and watch either.
Ah, interesting. It seemed like we were going to a point where maybe rear seat entertainment wasn't going to be that important because so many people are carrying around devices. And how have you decided that, but this maybe changes that around. What's your take on rear seat entertainment these days?
It's funny as a dad, this is really a game changer because I had those old spinning media systems, and my kids who are now 15, they loved them, right? And there was a period of time where I thought spinning media would never go away. What's interesting is you're right. They did go to their devices, whether it be an iPad or a laptop computer. And I'm really excited to say I had my kids in this vehicle, and they said, "Dad, this is the best rear seat entertainment ever."
What should our listeners know about the Grand Cherokee, particularly the 2-row that we're driving this time around, that you think they don't know, or is it most important for them to know?
So the things that I would make sure that our listeners know is, one, it's all new. We've adopted an entirely new platform. We've improved fuel economy by 1 mile city, 1 mile highway on the 3.6 all-wheel drive. Mm-hmm. We've upgraded the interior, as I've already mentioned. It has a plethora of safety features to help keep you safe and sound. It has an array of capability, everything from the drive lines that we've talked about, the water fording, which is now 24 inches. So in case you're finding yourself in a monsoon or in a flood, You know that you have the capability to get through it. And really the technology is there. We've already mentioned the rear seat entertainment, the passenger screen, and I know you had the opportunity to experience the Uconnect 5, which is 5 times faster. And we've really worked to make it, to minimize the number of selections you have to make to get to your desired application.
Well, thanks so much for being with us. We really do appreciate it. Thanks for sharing all of this about the new Jeep Grand Cherokee. We appreciate you being with us.
All right, Jack. Thanks for having me on.
And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road for our final segment in this week's show. It is the listener questions segment. We always love taking your listener questions. We like helping you out by giving you our answers, our opinions. We think they're of some value. We hope so. I know Chris's are. Mine, maybe not so much. No, I think mine maybe okay too. But here is a question that I have for Chris, and I'm kind of springing it on him, so we'll see how he responds. This is from Sammy with an I, so it's probably a female, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Sammy asks this: with fuel prices way up, I've been thinking about buying a new car that gets better fuel economy. Do you have thoughts for me on this?
I do have a bunch of thoughts on that. And I will say that it's unfortunate if you have to buy a car right now that you're going to be fighting against everybody else looking for the most desirable models. It's also unfortunate that when fuel prices go up, people tend to look at, when people are shopping for cars, smaller, more fuel efficient vehicles and fewer of the larger SUVs, which everyone tends to buy up as quickly as they can get them anyway. I will say that if you can wait, I would wait until at least the middle or the end of next year to see if things start to slow down a little bit and make things better. But if you're absolutely in the market and you have to buy one right now, there are deals to be had. There are lease deals to be had. Just be comfortable flexing your expectations and your wants to pick up something that might not be the color or the configuration that you're looking for.
I've got to agree with you in so many ways, Chris. I think, though, that to people to buy a new vehicle to save on gas and expect that to save you money is kind of a fool's errand. It rarely works out that way. That's my advice to Sammy, and I think you gave Sammy some good advice as well. And that is our show for this week. Thanks so much for being with us. Thanks to Chris Teague for co-hosting and lending his expertise to the show. He always does a terrific job.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I will say, if you like what you heard and you want to join us again, head to sportsmapradio.com. On the Saturday radio schedules, you can find our podcast listing, and you can listen to us wherever you want.
Absolutely, wherever you want. And that's the beauty of America. And this is America on the Road. So thanks so much for being with us with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad saying thanks for being with us this time around. And please join us again next week for another edition of America on the Road. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at MercuryInsurance.com. And if you're looking to buy a new car, a used car, or just want automotive information, go to DrivingToday.com. Driving Today is filled with the latest automotive information, including the America on the Road podcast. So check that out on drivingtoday.com. That's drivingtoday.com, the official website of America on the Road.